Good morning everyone, welcome to my channel. So part 2 of my little owl for the Roxy Creations prompt for the month of May. I've completed the area around the little owl itself. So I just thought I'd turn on the camera and show you what I've done so far, because I've actually started on the owl too. So I sort of needed just to take a little break from the owl because it's, you know, building up slowly, but I don't want to rush it because it's a lot of work to unpick if some element doesn't look right. So I thought I'll just turn on the video, have a chat to you about what I've done so far, and maybe that might clear my head of the next few stages that I'm thinking about for the actual owl. So if we just focus on the flowers at the moment and the background, everything is stitched down and I don't think I'll be adding anything else to it. So what I ended up doing is, got a bit of a shadow there, I put a bit of seed stitch, if you can see that there, in around the flowers, but I didn't do everywhere. That's a bit of a thing of me. I do the whole thing in seed stitch. So I just wanted to back it off a little bit and let the fabric speak for itself, because it's this beautiful old linen. And by seed stitching over it, you really do start to change the look of the fabrics that you're seed stitching. So I sort of wanted to leave a little bit of that exposed, and as well as around the owl itself, I left this exposed here because it's such a beautiful texture to start with without, you know, filling it in. I didn't seed stitch the calico corner, and there's another corner down here. I just ran a little running stitch around the edge just to give it something, but not, if you can see that, there's a little running stitch there on that corner up the top. So it's not seed stitched in there. In the centers of the flower, if you remember, there was a green in there, and in the first video I'd selected a heap of green embroidery threads and elements to bring green into it due to the center of those flowers. But in the end I decided to cover them with a little bit of chiffon and then a little bit of fibrous cheesecloth. So just to disguise the fact that there was a brown and green center to those flowers, and then just popped in some random little beads in the golds and the pearl sort of tones. The little elements that came from that big table runner, they've all been stitched down, and wherever they lay, I did seed stitch around them in cream. I did sort of fiddle around down here with the seed stitch, and I was going to do the brown everywhere, but I decided that whenever I was on this brown surface, I would use the brown seed stitch. Whenever I was on the pink, I would use pink seed stitch, and wherever I was on a surface that was the neutral, I would use neutral seed stitch. So I sort of had 3 little rules as I went along. I ended up, these little curly bits that were everywhere around the flowers, I stitched over them again in a pink running stitch. It was already there from the machine that would have created the piece, but I wanted to highlight it and make it, if anything, a little bit more raised. So I used a couple threads of embroidery cotton that matched the pink and just running stitched around those couple curly, there's another one there, curly tentacles off of the flowers. So it'll help secure it, plus stop it from fraying. So I was pretty happy with the way that come up. The flowers itself, I actually didn't do anything to. They were sort of holding their own in the sense that they weren't lost. They were sort of still looking predominant. So I was pretty pleased with them. The green leaves that were connected to the table runner, and that flower is also part of that table runner. All I did was put a little line of beads through the center, which sort of tied in the centers of the flowers, so it sort of helped connect it all. And you'll see in my little owl that he has these same beads on his eyebrows. You can see them there. So it's sort of, he sort of is part of the foliage, but he's not, if that makes sense. Now what else did I do to the background? That's about it. I really just secured all of the different elements, popped in some seed stitch, and a few beads here and there. So it was pretty simple, pretty quick. Top corner there, you've got that old-fashioned lace in that corner, and there was a little bit here from the lace collar from my grandmother's auntie. I've established that it was definitely an auntie. So I did needle turn edge those and stitched them down. I think they were already down in the last video anyway. So all I did was pop some little pink seed stitch over it. And that's the pink I used to just stitch down the little curly bits that come from the flowers. Okay, now the owl. Now I might just zoom in a little bit. So he's an interesting fellow. He is going to be a collage of many different mediums. So what I decided to do is I'm only going to focus on one side to start with, because it's easier to unpick something that doesn't look right anymore if you've only done the one side. And as for this side, because all the thought has gone in and you're pretty much happy with him, this is just great slow stitching. It's just look across, grab the next element and repeat. So he's sort of, how do I describe it? You're sort of nutting him out in a smaller space. So yeah, if you do want to reverse something or unpick something, it's not such a big hassle. So far I've used some satin ribbon and just done some stab stitches to put in place a couple pieces of this ribbon on a couple of his feathery areas. And then because it was really bulbous, I just used some normal cotton and just put a tiny little invisible stitch here and there just to keep it flat, because it was sort of such a big area to jump. It sort of was flapping in the breeze. So I just put a couple little stitches, like there's one right there, just pinning that ribbon out so that it covers that little space. And the same with his crown here, just a little stitch there, and I think there's another one there. Then I had this Steph Francis gold cord, excuse me. So that is about 3 or 4 big long stitches, and then once again I came back with some cotton. Let me just grab it and show you, just some normal sewing cotton, and pinned it down so that it wasn't sort of flapping all over the place. So that's what I did in that zone. I then just popped the one little seed bead. I sort of feel like I want to do something up here, but at the moment I've just put the one bead in. I'll have a little think about it, and that might be all it needs. He might get so elaborate that you need some little areas where it just sort of takes a breath for a moment. I then started on his eyebrow, and I knew I wanted it to be quite textured, so I've used a wool in around the very top. So there's a segment there that is in the wool over here. Then I put a line of the champagne beads just going through there. My intent was to actually fill it in completely, so I started outlining it, and I got right to the tip, and I was getting ready to come back through and fill it all full of beads, and it just started to feel quite heavy because I had already put in place this section, which is his eyebrow, this through here. It's handy having this undone so you can sort of see how I'm piecing it together. With these little beads, I did 3, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, and it sort of followed the width of his eyebrow, increasing and decreasing the set of beads I put on. So one stitch gathered 3 and went through twice. Then I picked up 2 beads, went through the beads twice so they're nice and secure. 2, 2, 3, 3. So I sort of, as the thickness of the eyebrow increased and then decreased, I just picked up 3, 2, or 1 bead and followed the curve of his eye. Now up here I wanted to create this feathery look, so using this lace that was from a edge of a table runner, I'm cutting out these little elements here to stitch in, and there's 2 there, and I've left it sort of flapping in the breeze so that it looks quite 3-dimensional. So that's what will go on his eyebrow. Now, there were 2 zones on that eyebrow. You can see them there, 1 and 2. That whole area is that little piece. So even though the pattern requires stitching in all these little zones, don't be afraid to break the rules a little bit, because sometimes the piece that is just perfect for him won't fit in there. And if you did try and get that lace to sit in there and stitch something else underneath, it'd be lost. As you can see, it's just not there anymore. So that whole area, even though it's 2 sections, is just that little tuft of lace, and that does happen. I think it'll happen down here a little bit. There's like 2 little sections side by side coming all the way down to the point of the owl, and already I can see that the satin ribbon or the silk ribbon has crept into that zone. So my feeling is that might be one zone, that'll be a zone, and I won't be doing 2 little sections, but we'll see how I go. We'll see what sort of I use and what sort of, allows me to fit, if that makes sense. Same with these wings. Even though there's 2 sections, maybe I'll do something big in that whole area, but I'm just not sure. So these are all the little decisions we've got to make. And like I said at the beginning, if you're only doing half the owl, and then you find out that you did find something for here, or you want to unpick it, you're only sort of messing around with one side. But he's coming together quite quickly. I'm pretty pleased with him, actually. I'm not sure about his eye yet. There is a few areas that need work in here, so I need to sort of have a little look at how I'm going to form the eye. I know that little triangle there will be white, and it'll probably be white beads, but it could be some satin stitch too. I'm just not sure. This is just the gumnut yarn again, or wool. Appleton wool would do the trick, but at the moment I'm working with gumnut yarn. It's a variegated yarn. I selected the 2 colours, so I'm pretty pleased with the way they're coming together. And because it's variegated, I'm getting this subtle, very subtle drift in the colours here, which I'm really liking. This section in here, this is another area I'm sort of thinking about of what I'll do in there to build that up. Now, part of me says beads. I've looked at sequins, but it sort of distorts the shape of the eye when you start putting round sequins through there. And even if I overlap them all, it's sort of like a scales on a fish, that overlapped look. It doesn't suit that space. So then I was looking at it thinking, well, why not just leave it? Because this is on beautiful vintage hemp, I'm thinking I'll leave it and just let the eye showcase that texture of that fabric. But I'm not sure yet. So we'll sort of see what comes of that. I think I'll work a little bit more on these feathers down here and sort of see if this gets a bit lost and might need something to bulk it up. It's going to be quite interesting to see how this sort of comes together, but I'm going to move away from the eye and work on feathers next. The beak is another tricky zone because an owl's beak is so distinctive. I've put a little line of 2x2 beads in the gold around, and they'll come back up this side when I'm totally convinced that they're correct, and I think I am. So then it comes to the center of his beak, what to do in there. It needs to be quite predominant, and at the moment, I'm just going to grab these little beads. At the moment, I've picked out these coppery brown little beads, and I'm thinking of using those in the center of his beak. So it really is quite a strong element on his face. So that's what I'm going to have a play with. If that looks too much, because they are pretty strong in color, I might have to go to a paler brown, but I'm thinking that they will actually look okay, but you won't know until you actually stitch it down. That's the trick with these types of embroideries. You've really got to just stitch a couple little bits and pieces down, have a bit of a look at it, Does the nose look like it's coming, or not nose, the beak coming out from the owl, which it should do, or does it look like it's receding into the owl, which you don't really want. You sort of want elements like beaks, eyes, and outer wings to sort of give you that 3D look. So that's pretty much where I'm at with my little owl. I'm pretty happy with the outside. I'm pretty sure I will not be doing any more embroidery to the outside. So now it's just all about my little owl. So I will stop the video here. I'll carry on with this little guy and sort of see what comes of it. I do still have one piece left of that table runner that I've used throughout. So I'm just not sure if it will come in, whether once I get the owl done, it comes up the side. I'm thinking it might, just to sort of have him nestled a little bit more, but we'll see. But I do have that one little element left to use if we need it. I didn't mention the little piece of lace here. Nothing really changed with my plans when I first spoke about this little chest area. The only thing I did do is I ended up having to trim, because there was a straight edge on that lace and then all these little teardrops sort of come down. So I trimmed off the straight edge, sort of like one of those types of edges was there, and I just shaped it a little bit because it was so square and we've got these round eyes coming down. So I did trim it just a little bit to get it to fit in that zone, and then left the peak come down. I have also noticed that my owl is a little bit skew whiff on the page, which is not a big problem, but you can see from this peak, it is straight, yet my owl's body is pointing to here. So the peak of the owl and the peak of this lace don't match up. But the beautiful thing about stitching is I can bring that line down through here and bring the peak more centered here. So that's something I'll need to adjust. I'd say when I traced the owl onto the fabric, he was just a little bit off on his angle. It's not bad, but I can see it, and it is something I will rectify by adjusting this bottom line a little bit once I start working the feathers of his underbelly. Okay, I've rambled enough, and I think you're up to speed now, so I'll stop the camera, and when I come back, my little man will be finished and hopefully looking gorgeous. Okay, everyone, see you all in a moment. Hello, everyone, I'm back. What I've done since we've just seen my progress to date was I finished in the beak of the owl with that dark brown bead. So I'm really happy with the way that's come together. It has really defined the beak like I wanted, but it hasn't made it a big brown blob by having the second gold bead around the outer edge. It has sort of made it look small but yet substantial. So I've just, while I was finishing that, thinking about this eye, and I've gone and grabbed the book that I got the owl from. Now, it's the Trish Burr's Embroidery Transfers. So the little guy is stitched in here as an example. So I just wanted to have a little look at this guy and sort of see what elements I sort of need to focus on to get the real shape of an owl. And there's a couple things I've spotted. Whether I do it or not is another thing, but it's something to consider. And these are the couple bits that I'm thinking about. The owl has had his eye stitched in like I've done. So that's the cream wool that I've put there, is this here. Then she's added a dark thread either side of it to really create that shape of the owl's eye, and I'm really thinking I'm going to do that. I think that's going to bring a nice element to defining where his feathers meet his actual eye. So I'll probably use a nice chocolate brown tone and I will put a little running stitch in around the outer edge of the eye there. This piece through here, it's actually a very fine stitch, and it looks like it's sort of lower than what's on this outer edge, and that's the feeling I had too. I'm thinking I'm going to leave this as is with no stitching. Then I've got my yarn around the outer edge here, and they've then put a little extra stitch over their embroidery to really define the edge of his face. And that whole feathered region on an owl is so predominant, to the point where when he twists his head around to look at things, nothing changes. It is a really strong part of the bird's facial structure. So I'm pleased I actually went and got this book and had another little look, because that little outline and those lines on there has just given me probably a little bit more confidence to add more detail in here. So I'm going to have a little play with that. Now the eye, they've used a brown in the eye, and they've used a two-tone. I don't know if you can see it there. It looks just black on the camera, but if I bring that up close, there's two colours of thread there. She's got a real dark brown at the base of the eye into a lighter version. Look at it, I'm shaking. And then a little bit of white. So that's quite an interesting detail to give the eye that glossy round look. So I need to have a little look through my cottons to see what I've got that can transition from dark into a lighter dark and then a little bit of white. I think that'll be beautiful if I can pull that off. What else did I notice on our little bird? I think that's probably it. Everything else, I think, sort of holding its own and looking gorgeous. At the end of the day, I'm not doing a fully embroidered crewel embroidery thread owl. He is a textured collage, so some things sort of need to just find their own space. But I think I can certainly use some of these ideas on my little guy to really define the eye. There is another one stitched on this previous page. There he is there. So once again, using that thread. See, they've used, exactly the same sort of styling. So that's the story with the little owl from the book. So it doesn't hurt to pull it out and have a little look, because if someone's already created the owl before you, there might be a few little elements there that might sort of open up your thought processes to some different ideas. Okay, so we'll stop the video and I will carry on with my little guy, and we'll see where he goes. Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm back, and my little owl Hoot, Mr Hoot, has been finished. So I'm actually filming at a friend's house because we're away at the moment with them on a little holiday, and I'm using their kitchen bench. So I'm sorry about the shadow that's just here, but I'm using, just their kitchen bench to sort of give you a quick update on Mr Hoot. So I ended up using black thread only in the eyes. I know I discussed using a two-tone of two different browns or two different grey blacks. I ended up just starting the black and just kept going, and then stitched in the white to give that little reflective look to his eyes. And I just used lots and lots of little stab stitches and just took my time and slowly filled him in. Around his eyes, the first ring, I ended up using a shiny crochet cotton that I picked up from a craft store. I think it's a number 12. And then I use number 8 for all of the seed stitch. One's called wheat and one's called cream. The next layer coming out was the wool, similar to Appleton, but it's a gumnut yarn that you can buy here in Australia, and it's got a slight variation to it, and that colour also went up on the very top section of his eye. I then used the slightly darker wool to do the final ring around his actual face, and then I went over a few spots with some little back stitches and some little tacking stitches to create those chocolate lines. That's not what I used. I left it at home. It was stranded cotton, just a dark chocolate. But I had that in my little needle case here to give you a bit of an idea of the colour I used. I then trimmed the lace a little bit so that it fit in his chest area. I then started the beading. So across his eyebrows was just the cream beads. His nose I did gold and then chocolate. What else did I do? I then started building his wings. I sort of did one big wing, which was a combination of the little pearly beads plus a sequined with a little pearly bead on the top. I'll bring that up to the camera. You can see there's a sequin. And as I brought the needle through that sequin, I picked up a bead and then went back down through the hole in the sequin, and that secured the bead, which in turn held the sequin in place. So it's a nice little adjustment there of texture. Then this little wing on the outer edge, that was just a champagne seed bead, but through the center I just put some of those tubular, rectangular shaped beads. They'd have a name, but it just eludes me at the moment. Then around his inner body, I just blended these seed beads together and put a little touch of pink in there, which sort of picks up his environment that he's sitting in. So that was like little sections. So instead of doing those little sections, I just followed his shape and just seed beaded that. Used a couple little flowers here off of my lace, and his little feathers at these eyebrows was that lace, and then I added just a little bit here at the bottom. I haven't stitched little feet for him because it's sort of, I couldn't work out where I could put it in without sort of fiddling around with what was happening here anyway, and I don't think I need it. I think we've got the illusion already that he is sitting there, so I just didn't think it was necessary. What else did I end up doing? I don't think I did much else to the perimeter of it. I didn't go back and seed stitch anymore. Like I said earlier in the video, I just wanted to back off the seed stitch and so I could see the fabric, because I tend to just seed stitch and keep going, and I didn't there as well. I just sort of left it. Oh, the eye. In that eye there, I could have probably done another cotton, but I didn't. I left the fabric pop through, and I really like how it's created a little bit of depth to the owl's face, so I didn't end up stitching anything there. I think I realized that this flower was missing one of those little white ones like I had done up here, so I stitched him into place, but pretty much that's it. Hoot is done. That's the little trim that I've been using for feathers and flowers for the little guy, which was on a napkin I picked up at a thrift store. So that's it for Hoot. So I'll attach this little video to what I filmed earlier, so it'll all sort of give you the process that, and well, not so much the process, even just my thinking as how I sort of built the little guy together. I end up not adding anything extra to his top feather here. I've just got the one little bead in there. I like it. It's just a little hint of pearl. I think if I had it continued on there, it would have been a very obvious straight line because it's such a big bead. And once I sort of stitched this in, I sort of looked back up here and thinking, no, I'm just going to let the Steph Francis glittery, it's not even yarn, it's nearly a woven fabric, just do its thing. So I decided enough was enough. Sometimes you do need to just stop and let it be. Okay, that's it. That's Mr Hoot done. I can't wait to get him home and put him into my journal, and soon it'll be June and we'll be getting another prompt. So ever so much looking forward to that. Okay, see you all later. Bye-bye.